Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Good to be here.
Today, we're tackling something that's, well, probably on your mind as you're looking at prices these days. Tariffs.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
We've got a really insightful article from Salon.com. It sort of pulls back the curtain on how these trade policies, especially the U.S.-China situation, are starting to have some pretty surprising real-world effects.
Right. Tangible effects.
So our goal in this deep dive is really to look beyond the big economic headlines and give you the clear picture on what these tariffs actually are, who they're impacting.
Maybe why it should matter to you.
Exactly. Whether you're just buying everyday stuff or maybe even thinking about the value of your car.
Yeah, the Salon piece really brings it home with specific examples. It shows how these, high-level decisions trickle down.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture then. The U.S.-China trade dynamic.
Right.
The article points out, and the White House has stated this, there's a minimum tariff rate of, get this, 145% on all goods coming into the U.S. from China.
Wow, 145%? That's huge. A really substantial cost being added right there.
It really is.
And, it's important to remember, this isn't just a one-way street.
Good point.
As the article notes, China's hit back with its own tariffs on American goods. They're now at 125%.
So it's reciprocal.
Exactly. This back and forth, it creates this cycle, right?
Yeah.
Potentially leading to higher costs, disruptions. It affects businesses and consumers on both sides. Kind of need to see both sides to get the whole picture.
So, okay, with tariffs hitting those kinds of levels, 145%, 125%, it feels kind of inevitable that, well, you, the consumer, are going to start feeling it somewhere.
Yeah, seems likely.
And that brings us to this idea the article talks about, tariff surcharges. This is where it gets really direct, right? Because some companies are now actually listing these costs separately.
Precisely. Instead of just quietly baking it into the overall price, some are being, transparent about it.
Yeah, here's the price, and oh yeah, here's the tariff part.
Exactly. It gives us this really clear, almost like a line item view of the direct cost hitting the consumer. It also kind of makes you wonder about their strategy, Are they hoping we'll understand it's not just them raising prices for profit?
That's an interesting thought. The article gives some concrete examples. Let's take Le Buc.
Okay.
It's a high-end footwear brand, but they make their shoes in Italy.
Right, Italy, not China.
But they've announced a 10% price increase starting April 15th, and then another 10% coming in May.
2 increases.
So if they're made in Italy, what's the connection to the tariffs we were just talking about, mainly the U.S.-China ones?
That's a really crucial point. It shows it's broader than just one trade dispute.
Okay.
While U.S.-China gets the headlines, there are other tariffs in play. There's a general 10% tariff, plus specific ones on materials like steel and aluminum. Remember those?
Ah, right. Steel and aluminum.
So it's possible Le Buc's supply chain uses components, maybe soles or buckles or something, sourced from places hit by these broader tariffs.
So even though the shoes are assembled in Italy,
the parts might come from elsewhere. Or maybe they're just anticipating more shifts in trade policy overall and are trying to get ahead of it, adjusting pricing proactively.
That makes sense. It shows the ripple effect.
Definitely. It's wider than just the two main countries arguing.
Okay, then there's another example, Dame. That's the adult toy and personal care brand.
Right.
They're adding an automatic $5 surcharge. Just flat $5 on all online orders.
Automatic.
And their CEO is quoted saying, pretty bluntly, our whole industry is in China, so we've already seen the impact.
Oof. Yeah, that quote really tells you something, doesn't it?
It really does.
It underlines how much some sectors rely on manufacturing in China in this case, and how immediately these tariffs hit their bottom line.
And then those costs get passed on.
They have to. They face a tough choice. Absorb it, which hurts profits, or pass it to the customer with these surcharges.
And that $5 flat fee, it just emphasizes how significant it must be for them.
Yeah, unavoidable, basically.
Yeah, and it's not just these maybe more niche consumer goods, is it?
No, not at all.
The article also points out that U.S. chipmaker Micron,
big player,
and Honeywell Building Automation, they've announced their own tariff surcharges too.
Right, and when you see names like Micron making memory chips for everything.
Computers, phones, cars.
Yeah, and Honeywell doing critical building systems. When they're adding surcharges, it signals a much, much wider ripple effect through the whole economy.
So it's not just the final product you buy off the shelf?
No. It could mean higher costs baked into tons of other things you use or services you rely on, even if you don't buy directly from Micron or Honeywell.
The article also mentioned this other tactic some companies are using.
Oh, yeah?
Kind of a buy now incentive, basically saying, look, prices are going up because of tariffs, so grab it now before it gets even more expensive.
Huh.
That's
Oh, well, it's clever marketing, I guess.
a bit of a pressure tactic, maybe.
Yeah, it plays on that fear of missing out, or rather the fear of paying more later, but it also kind of confirms the whole point, doesn't it?
How so?
It shows they expect prices to keep rising because of these tariffs. They're basically telling you it's happening.
Good point. Okay, so we're seeing these direct price hikes, these surcharges, but here's where the story takes a really unexpected twist, according to the article.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The impact on the used car market.
Used cars, how do they fit in?
Well, this was something I definitely hadn't considered. Apparently, those steel tariffs, the ones that went into effect earlier in April.
The ones we mentioned affecting Lubbock, potentially.
Right. They're projected to increase the cost of new cars, maybe by thousands of dollars.
Okay, that makes sense. Steel is a major component, so tariffs on steel mean higher manufacturing costs for new vehicles. Logically, they get more expensive.
Exactly. But here's the counterintuitive part. What happens to the used car market when new cars suddenly get way more expensive?
Demand for used cars would go up.
Seems like it. And the article uses this really great real-world example. A guy named Keel Porter from Bloomberg.
Okay.
He bought a used 2022 Honda CR-V hybrid back in November. Paid just over $30,000. Had about 41,000 miles on it.
All right. Seems like a normal transaction.
Then just last week, apparently, he gets this, quote, panicked call from the dealership where he bought it.
Panicked? Why panicked?
They wanted to buy the car back from him, and they offered him substantially more than he paid just a few months ago.
Whoa. They want to buy it back for more money after he's put more miles on it.
Right. Crazy. So what was the dealer's reasoning for this sudden panicked offer?
I need to know this.
The manager apparently told him their inventory of used vehicles was shrinking fast.
Okay.
And they desperately needed cars, like Porter's CR-V hybrid, that they knew they could resell really quickly.
So it's about their inventory drying up.
Exactly. And why is it drying up? Because with new cars getting more expensive due to the steel tariffs,
more people are looking at used cars instead. Demand spikes.
Bingo. So the demand for good quality used cars, like his, just shot up basically overnight.
Wow. That's a very direct illustration, isn't it? A tariff on a raw material, steel.
Makes new cars pricey.
Which suddenly makes used cars more valuable.
It's this weird, unexpected ripple effect. Tariffs aimed at, maybe boosting domestic steel or whatever.
End up potentially putting more money in the pocket of someone just selling their used car.
It's a prime example of how complex these economic policies can be, often unpredictable.
It really underscores just how interconnected everything is. You push here, and something unexpected pops up over there.
Yeah.
It makes it very tangible, doesn't it? It's not just numbers on a report. It's affecting the value of stuff you own.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. What are the key things you, our listener, should really take away from this deep dive on tariffs?
I think the main thing is realizing these tariffs aren't just, abstract economic theory or something only politicians talk about.
Right. They're not just happening over there.
Exactly. They're having a direct and increasingly visible impact on the prices you pay for lots of different things.
From like shoes and personal items.
For potentially big purchases like cars, or even the cost of services that rely on things like computer chips. Those surcharges are the proof.
Yeah, the surcharges make it pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And it's not just about paying more, is it?
No, that's the other key point. As we saw with the whole used car situation.
Wild.
These policies can trigger these really unexpected shifts, create weird dynamics in different parts of the economy. Sometimes even opportunities, I guess, if you happen to be selling a used car right now.
Huh. Yeah, maybe.
It just highlights how interconnected everything is. You got to look beyond the immediate headline sometimes.
So as we keep navigating this evolving economic situation.
With trade tensions still simmering.
And the potential for maybe even more tariffs down the line.
Yeah.
It's just really crucial to be aware of these kind of underlying forces at play. They're shaping things more than we might realize.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, it brings up a really interesting final thought for people to maybe chew on.
Okay.
If tariffs on steel can unexpectedly boost the value of used cars, what other seemingly unrelated parts of the economy might be feeling similar, maybe less obvious, shifts because of these big trade policies?
Like, what other hidden connections are out there?
Exactly. What other surprising impacts might you personally encounter as this whole situation keeps developing? It's definitely something worth keeping an eye on, just observing different markets. You might be surprised what you notice.